Hi, I'm Ashley Adamson. This is an Ask Me Anything episode. If you have questions or want to ask me anything or topics that you'd like me to cover, please suggest those in the comments. I love to see them and I take note and I'm going to answer all of them. I swear, that's what my goal is. So today's episode is actually focused on one question because it's a big question, which is from Alice. Alice says, I'm interested to hear more regarding spiritual life. You had hinted that you would dive into that at some point. I would love to get a chance to see things from your perspective. Thank you, Alice, for asking. So my spiritual life is all of my life. Like everything that I do feels as if it's aligned towards one spiritual mission. And this feeling kind of gets refined the further I move along. So you know this question where it's like, what's your life purpose? Or what does everything mean? Or what's the meaning that I'm trying to create into the world? Do you ask yourself that? For me, the question that I'm asking is, how do I get to this feeling that I know is there? There's this feeling in the future that I can feel that has this sense of impact and creation in the world. Like I want to just give. I want to give this rising up feeling of creation and manifestation and empowerment. And the trick is really to find how to do that. You know, you have to have an audience and you have to have income that supports you in doing that. And that's the piece that I'm asking myself every day is, what do I need to do to get there? What are the steps that I need to take? So that's a very almost like logistical and execution based perspective on my spiritual path. But then there's also this spiritual practice. And I haven't talked about this that much because it's my own personal practice. And I wasn't sure if anyone would be interested in this, to be honest, but I'll tell you. So the first thing is I spend time balancing myself. I spend time sitting on the floor, checking in with my spine and my alignment within my body. And I start to tap into my hands and energy in my hands so I can bring energy into my body. And I practice like a kung fu that I have learned a little bit from working with some shamans in the Eastern arts, but also intuitively. I have a lot of past lives as a warrior. And one of those past lives, I was an expert or like studying in a very high level, an inner martial arts form that helps you transform. And I discovered this on acid one day with my sister in Berlin. And we had a past life regression together where we saw how we had chosen this life to work together on some of that. And so there's a part of me that is connected to this energy work and inner kung fu that I haven't yet sorted out how I'm going to teach and give. But if you're interested in something like that, please tell me and I'll make a video immediately. I'm not sure who's going to be receptive to it. And so I make these other videos about being trans and stuff like that because, you know, that's valuable to you guys. But if you also really love this spiritual stuff, I can dive so deep into it. There's a lot of stuff to cover. And so I'm really trying to figure out how the energy work in what I'm doing in transforming myself, I can give to others. And then my transition, just in general, is a spiritual thing. So my soul, my being, her, she fell into my body. It wasn't like this slow buildup of realizing that I was a woman. It was these steps that I took where I said, you know, I'm cross-dressing and blah, 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 and now this feels good and that feels good. But then there was a distinct moment in 2018 where I was at a music festival. I was dancing, I was doing energy movements that I was talking about earlier. And then these upper chakras opened up and I fell into my body. And it was this weird feeling because liquid consciousness came in and it mixed with my other consciousness. And so when your consciousness identifies with itself, it has a perception of being I and me. But when you have another part of your consciousness that has been separated for so long and has its own identity, when you bring those two together, you get this perception of yourself where there are two versions of yourself perceiving yourself. And when that happened, I also became the observer of these two selves seeing and meeting themselves. So one, like my non-binary self went, oh, you're a new person. And then she went, oh, you're a new person. And I saw this and we saw this from both perspectives. And then we saw that these two things happening between these two people as an observer. So that kind of created and casted this perception of this us, this we, this multifaceted self that really started to integrate and move and shift. And so she had lots of messages to tell me, like, this is your path. And I saw a lightning bolt. She said, you must choose it and you must go. It's your destiny. You have to share, you have to broaden, you have to bring balance and bring the masculine and feminine together. And I started to practice this connection. And over time, it really created a deeper sense of connection to her until eventually I was able to accept and bring her fully in. And I talk about this in my previous video about like catching and how like your masculine gender, if you're male to female, it can kind of like just be stuck there in your hand. And so when you wake up in the morning, it's programmed there. Because like maybe in the day you're conscious and you're like, okay, I want to put a feminine energy here and I want that to stay. But then you go to sleep and your subconscious takes over and that shifts to default. So you wake up and you kind of go through your day. But if you clear this out and you make space, you can really enable the new self to slip in, to change and to create and shift your perception and allow you to catch new things that are going to help you change. So I practiced that a lot and it gave me this space in my mind and my brain to start shifting and changing. And it felt like a locking of gears, like putting things together. And as that change happened, my spiritual life started to expand. I started to really work on perception. I think this is one of the most important things that we can have and acknowledge and work with. And it's also kind of the least exciting to hear. You know, the word perception. Oh yeah, everything's perception. But like when you work with perception, when you see the nuance of what perception is, you can break it down and say, okay, so it's an observation that then creates a reaction within me that then creates a decision on what I am seeing. And then I project that onto the thing that I'm seeing. And then I react to the thing that I have projected onto the thing that I am seeing. And so when you think about this with your body and your dysphoria, what that breaks down to is you look at yourself in the mirror, you actually see, you see yourself as a blank slate for a second, but then you're biased. And so then you say, well, that's me. And then because that's me, I react to that's me. And then I say, okay, well, that still looks like a man. And then I'm going to project that onto what I see. And then I'm going to say that is a man. And then I'm going to react to that and say I have body dysphoria. And so when I would look into the mirror, I started to practice blanking and removing and preventing and changing the pre-projection before I have that perception of the thing that I'm seeing, to catch myself, to reprogram my mind. Because if you want to change your perception, what you really need to do is you need to change that moment from the blank state to what you are processing and seeing. And that part of what you're processing and seeing it needs to be removed, or you can inject a new version. So what I would do is I'd inject like woman into this space instead. And so I'd come into the room, and as I'd look into the mirror, I'd project woman. And then I'd see and project onto myself the perception of woman. And that really helped me change. If you have other questions about my spiritual life, I'd love to answer them. I'm not sure what specific questions you have, Alice, but yeah, I'd love to chat more about this anytime. So thanks for joining me for tea time. Sending you some love. Bye.